Silence reigned in the hall, and the king of the country, sitting on the throne, asks the young men whether they both choose Hinel as their wife. Before us are the princess's suitors, Count Phil and Prince Vian, and they both stole the hearts of women at the ball that marked the beginning of this story. Count Phil, the most refined of them all, with refined manners and elegance, has long been fascinated by the princess and loves her. Prince Vianth, whose gaze is full of secrets, does not understand why he cannot choose Hinel if he likes her more. The princess has to make a choice between two young men, and what will be the consequences of this battle for her attention is of interest to everyone in the castle. The ladies of the court are impatient to see who the princess will choose, and their whispers, drowning out the music, create excitement. Count Phil, nicknamed by ladies and gossips the Count of Love, is a terrible womanizer, every girl's dream, the complete opposite of Ruza Vianta. And here is the prince, the cold and ruthless Vianth, who was promised one of the 5 princesses as a wife because of the country's loss. We see Princess Hinel, who is waiting for the decision of her father, the king, and his answer will determine both her future and that of the entire country. But the princess knows the answer to her question because history repeats itself again, and she is caught in a time loop. So who will she choose now? The story begins in the cold, with Hinel riding and feeling sick in the carriage, as she is expecting her long-awaited child from Count Phil. The caring maid Dea is not a beauty, but she is the princess's best friend, always ready to support Hinel with a kind word. Hinel reassures her that everything is fine and smiles wearily, thinking about the child who will become a symbol of hope. The maid Dea does not understand how she and the princess could be sent to such a remote place and in a snowstorm in her condition. Dea hates Hinel's fiancé, Count Phil, and is angry at him for his frivolity because she feels that his frivolity is a threat. Hinel is expecting a baby and is ready to forgive the Count for his betrayals because she hopes that the birth of a child will change him and he will become different. Suddenly, a man stops the carriage and orders them to get out. His voice sounds threatening and does not bode well. The maid does not understand why they have to go out in such cold weather when a blizzard is raging outside the window and every gust of wind frightens them. The princess has to go out into the cold because something in the carriage broke. She decides to show courage and not give in to panic. Suddenly, the girl is surrounded and separated from her maid, and anxiety begins to grow in her heart as she realizes that she is in the hands of menaces. Hinel fights off the men, but they don't want to hear about their master's child, and her heart pounds with fear, and she calls for help. The Count appears, tension in the air as he coldly assesses the situation, and the naive Hinel is glad he is here. Hinel asks the Count why he is here. Her voice trembles with excitement and hope, and she hopes to see support in him, but the Count digs his hands into her shoulders, closes the distance between them. His face is dark, and he does not bode well. As the Count says, it is not Hinel who should become his wife. He would like to marry a certain Isabella, and the girl is not interesting to him. The Count has no other choice but to get rid of his wife and unborn child. His cruelty takes over, and he kills them. The ground beneath their feet is very fragile, like thin ice, ready to crack at the slightest movement. Small stones fall under their feet. The Count pushes the poor girl off the cliff, and at that moment time seems to freeze, and the life of the main character and her baby ends. Hinel is shocked by the betrayal. The wind whistles in her ears, and her heart pounds in her chest, and she understands that she will never forgive the Count. Before Hinel's eyes is the Count's victorious smile, full of self-satisfaction and ruthless confidence in his power. Waking up, Hinel realizes that she is not pregnant, but at the same time, the girl realizes that her dreams of a future with her beloved are shattered. Dea, who woke her up, believes that the princess's nightmares are due to foreigners, and the princess realizes that she is living her life again. Prince Viante Ruse, a ruthless and heartless conqueror, returns to the kingdom for his reward, marriage to the princess. Everyone in the palace feels sorry for the princess, who will become the wife of the tough Vianth, who is incapable of love, and her fate seems predetermined. Due to the change in time, the princess knows that Viant will win the war for the throne. His cruelty and ambition will destroy everything. Also, the princess knows that Vianth is marrying a princess who is a gift in the friendship of the kingdoms, and this union is because of politics. Hinel must die at the hands of her husband. Her child will also die with her, never being born, and the kingdom will face a sad future. Count Zederphil rejoices over the death of his wife, considering her death his victory and liberation from ambition, since he dreams of power. The girl understands that her husband doesn't need her while she's pregnant, and decides to take revenge on the Count by reliving the story and correcting it. She orders the faithful Dia to take out all the dresses and jewelry from the wardrobe, as the main character's revenge for the child in death has begun. The princess explains to the maid that she wants to greet the guest, Prince Rouge-Viant, in the best traditions of the country, as befits the daughter of a king. The maid Dea is curious why the princess wants to go to the homeland of Viant, and why she has such a sudden interest in another guy. Dea believes that the king wants a love marriage for his daughter, despite the fact that he raped her mother, and the monarch does not love his daughter. The princess understands that she will still marry the count, which means that she and her child will be killed in the future. Hinel wants to dress more provocatively to attract the attention of everyone present and demonstrate her independence. The main character decided to change her story, save her baby, and take revenge on the vile count. The main character is having lunch with her mother. They are eating cake, and there is peace and quiet between them. The princess, who wants to take her revenge and is deep in thought, is only brought out of her dark thoughts by her mother. Mother asks Hinel to serve her a strawberry cake, and she continues to tell about her past. Hinel's mother is a servant, but became the king's concubine when he raped her, and she only has the title of queen. The girl's mother informs the main character about her future engagement to Count Zederphil, the main villain and traitor. The princess's mother believes that marriage with the count is good luck, that he will bring honor to their family, and the main character is a lucky woman. The girl also thought about marrying the count once, until she saw what a scoundrel he was when he killed her, and she was a naive fool. However, the count shattered her dreams by mercilessly killing the girl and her newborn baby, pushing her off a cliff into the bitter cold. Hinel will never forgive the count for her death and the death of her child, so she does not listen to her mother and thinks up a plan for revenge on Phil. The king's daughter thinks about how to use Viant in her revenge on the count and draw him into this game while remaining an innocent lamb. Today is her mother's birthday, and some things happened on this day, as far as the main character remembers. The prince of a neighboring state, Rouge-Viant, brutally stabbed a man to death that day. At night, we are shown the doors to the prince's chambers, and the castle guard is informed that there are thieves in the castle. The princess informs the guard that the belongings of the visiting Rouge-Viant have disappeared, and the local guard is suspected of the theft. She says that the embroidery with the image of the goddess has disappeared, and there is panic in her voice, so the embroidery must be found urgently. Because of the time loop, she knows that the thief is the guard in front of her, and boldly accuses the guard of stealing the embroidery. It seems that the guard stole it and death awaits him, because there will be no mercy for this crime. Out of fear of execution, the guard gives up the embroidery. Guilt and relief fight inside him, because he realizes that everything has been changed. The guard is grateful to the princess that he will not be executed, and he understands that now he must do everything to prove his loyalty to the crown. He leaves the princess alone. He retreats into the shadows and is full of regrets and uncertainty. The king's daughter calmed down because she was afraid, and when the fear receded, in her heart there was hope for revenge on the count. The princess sees the embroidery for the first time, and her eyes shine with admiration as she examines every detail of the beautiful image. She thinks that embroidery is expensive because such beauty, woven with love, seems priceless to her as a symbol of hope for happiness. Rouge-Viant never parts with her embroidery, as it is a gift from her deceased mother, which holds more than just memories. The main character believes that the embroidery will help her talk to the prince, and that it is the key to some dark secret. Suddenly, someone wants to kill Hinel. She feels a chill of fear run down her spine, and realizes that she needs to act. The mysterious young man puts a sword to her throat and says that he wanted to kill the thief on the spot. He is unhappy that the princess saved the thief, because in his eyes, this is a betrayal that threatens not only her reputation. The mysterious young man turns out to be Rouge-Viant himself, the second candidate for the hand of the princesses of the kingdom, since he was promised one of the daughters. The girl wondered how the young man got in, because the door was locked and the windows were closed, and she could not explain how he ended up there. Seeing the pendant, the young man's face changes, and after asking Hinel what she is doing here in her underwear, he wants to take it away. He runs to her. His desire to get what can change the girl's life and reveal the secrets of the Dark Prince forever is evident. He is like a beast, full of determination and thirst to get his prey, not noticing anything around him. Rouge rushes at the princess, his heart pounding with excitement. Viant and Heinel are now on the floor, their breathing quickening and their eyes full of emotion as the tension between them grows. Hinel is embarrassed, her cheeks flushing as she realizes the prince is too close. The prince's face and eyes changed due to magic. He gained new power, capable of changing the fate of the entire kingdom. He takes the magical embroidery. A warm stream of energy penetrates his hands, filling him with strength and confidence that he will fix everything. Magic surrounds the prince, and Hanel sits down on the floor. Since she is in her underwear, she wraps herself up tighter. The young man presses the embroidery to his chest, feeling its magic begin to intertwine with his soul, filling him with determination. Vianth picks up the fallen sword, the blade itself whispering to him of forgotten battles and destinies he must change. The princess begs Vianta to listen to her, her voice trembling with excitement, and a spark of hope shining in her eyes. Every word is her last. Vianth asks Hanel about the guard and puts away his sword, realizing that now is not the time for violence, but rather to sort things out. The princess replies that she was afraid of the death of the thief and conflict between countries, because violence can lead to destruction and conflict. The prince mocks her, claiming that her fears are foolish and that in this world only the strongest can survive, ignoring everything about the world. The young man sharply remarks that if she cares about her country, why didn't she stop the invasion? And he is perplexed by her weakness. Ruse can still smell the blood of her country's warriors and hear the sounds of battle, and that terrible scent haunts him, reminding him of the dead. Hanel doesn't know what to say. Her thoughts are confused, and she feels only fear and helplessness. Hanel sadly admits that her country is to blame for this war between the two states. The crown prince is not happy with the princess's origins, from a servant who was raped by the king. Hanel confirms that she is the youngest daughter of the king of the 5 princesses promised to Ruzu as a gift from the country. In the past, the prince had no interest in women. He was only interested in wars, and he always avoided them. He needs a woman to bear an heir, but in his heart there are doubts about whether he will be able to find someone who will share this important mission with him. The princess offers herself as a wife for the future king, realizing that this is not only the fulfillment of a duty to her people. The main character asks the prince to choose her as his wife, and then she will do whatever he wants. She promises him loyalty and love. Vianth considers a tempting offer that could change his life forever. He grins, revealing a row of snow-white teeth, which hints that he liked the offer, and the thoughts are known only to him. Ruse recalls being infuriated by his father's proposal to give his daughter to a concubine and the king, who considered it a disgrace to his family. He lights a candlestick and approaches the girl, his face illuminated by the warm light of the candles. The prince is interested because the prize for the war is unusual for him, not a kingdom or treasures, but a princess who will abandon the count. Hanel asks to take her as a wife. She is in her underwear and alone with the young man. There is no one else in the room. Hanel suddenly realizes that everything is visible through her shirt when her body inadvertently flashes before the stunned Prince Vianth. Ruse doesn't understand why she shyly covers herself under his dark gaze, because everything is fine with her body. Princess Heinel Viant asks mockingly how she will entertain him, since they are left alone and there is no one else. She firmly decided to change her destiny in order to free herself from the past, take revenge on the count, and save her unborn child. Hanel is ready to do whatever the prince says for the sake of the child, even if it requires great sacrifices and bold decisions from her. The king's daughter slowly undresses, feeling the prince's gaze on her, and this moment is just a prelude to something more. Vianth didn't expect this, and his heart started beating faster from surprise. He was clearly embarrassed by Hanel's actions. The clothes were removed, and now she stood before him, as beautiful and mysterious as in any of the wildest fantasies of the men of the kingdom. The crown princess stood in the middle of the room completely naked, embarrassed and uncomfortable, as she did not love the prince. Vianth realizes that he laughed in vain and realizes that his words hurt her feelings, and now he will have to apologize to the girl. Hanel asks if the prince is touched, her voice trembling with emotion as she hopes that her words will be able to touch his soul. There is a silence between them, filled with tension, as if each of them was waiting for someone to break this silence. Vianth laughs. His laughter sounds like a melody, filling the room with warmth, and in that moment all worries and doubts seem far away. The princess arouses his curiosity the more he looks at her, realizing that behind her mysterious smile are deep thoughts. The girl thinks about what to do, analyzing all possible options, and tries to find a solution that will help her in the future. A black cloak is thrown into her hands to cover herself, and wrapped in the soft fabric, she feels warm and safe. Vianth orders her to get dressed, and slowly rising from her knees, she begins to put on the simple yet elegant clothes from the prince. Ruse asks the princess why she is going so far, and there's a mixture of concern and bewilderment in his voice. Hanel gathers her courage, taking a deep breath to calm her trembling knees, and finally looks the prince in the eye with determination. The king's daughter talks about the groom and her father's decision, describing how her heart cannot accept this marriage because she dreamed of love. She is determined not to marry the Count, and she is ready to fight for her happiness despite her anger and disappointment. Vianth understands that he has no choice, and although his heart is drawn to freedom and independence, he is forced to agree with the princess. The girl believes that she was convincing and will become the prince's wife, because her words came from the depths of her heart, full of hope. Vianth warns her that there are rumors about him, and although he tries to remain calm, there is concern in his voice. The girl awaits the prince's further actions, hoping that he will show courage and determination to prove his feelings. The prince tells her that he is more like a beast because of his cruelty, and that he is afraid of how this dark side can push her away. The protagonist warns her that he may lose control of himself, and his inner demons may take over, which is very bad. The young man believes that shedding blood suits him better than a peaceful life, because an uncontrollable passion for war rages in his heart. Hinel doesn't care what they say about the prince, because she knows that behind his cold mask lies a complex soul full of passions. She asks the prince for only one thing, believing that this is her opportunity to be herself, without masks and pretense, and that she will be able to save herself. The prince wonders what kind of request is hidden behind her words, and he feels his heart begin to beat faster. The princess's condition is to bear the prince's child, but she also hopes that this will be the beginning of a deep bond between them. The princess understands that the prince will not love her, because his heart already belongs to another, and she must come to terms with reality. But she asks the prince to protect her future baby, hoping that there is no love between them, but he can become a support. A maid knocks on the door, having forgotten to close the window, explaining that a strong wind has blown dust and leaves throughout the palace. The prince and Hinel are afraid that they will be seen together because their secret meeting could displease the royal family and ruin everything. The main character invites the princess to the garden tomorrow, where they can enjoy some privacy under the flowering trees. He will give his answer at tomorrow's meeting, when he has gathered courage and understands that their feelings are worth all the risks. Ruse leaps over the balcony, landing deftly on the soft grass in the garden, his heart pounding with adrenaline and excitement. Hinel was scared because they were on the second floor, and it seemed to her that he would die from this jump. But the prince did not crash, but, on the contrary, landed deftly on the soft grass, like an experienced acrobat, and, getting up, looked around. The young man smiled at her goodbye, his heart still pounding with adrenaline, and he felt hope. The main character leaves, and with every step he feels how his soul is filled with lightness and freedom, he throws off heavy chains. The princess was amazed, and her heart began to beat faster, and hope flared up in her soul that perhaps together they could change everything. It was midday in the castle, and the sun's rays, breaking through the stained glass windows, painted the walls with bright colors, creating an atmosphere. Dea asks her mistress if she is expecting guests, because there was an unusual bustle in the castle, and the servants were preparing for something. The princess looks elegant today, and her eyes shine with joy and excitement, foreshadowing important events. Dea notices that her mistress has been injured when a thin line of blood appears on her delicate skin, causing excitement inside Dea. Hinel is worried whether the prince will accept her proposal, because so many hopes and dreams of a future together have arisen in her heart. She thinks that if she looks different, the prince will notice her, and images of bright dresses flash through her head. Suddenly, Vianth's father's legal wife comes up with her friends from the 5th courtyard, who just wants to offend her with her nasty words. The queen did not know that the princess would be here, and her heart was filled with anxiety when she saw a familiar figure. The princess greets Vianth's mother and the other women with her, trying to hide the excitement in her voice, and bows to the queen with a smile. The queen's friends are actively discussing it, whispering to each other and exchanging glances full of envy and curiosity. The princess's mother was forced into marriage by the king and now lives in shame, hiding from the prying eyes and whispers of the court. At this moment, Ruse's assistant, Count Evan, appears, and with a determined expression on his face, attracts our attention. He introduces himself to the princess and the maid, saying that he heard about her meeting with the prince, and his eyes sparkle with curiosity. Evan takes the girl to his master, carefully leading her through the castle garden, decorated with tapestries and flowers. Vianth's mother is unhappy with this because she believes that her son should not get carried away by romantic dreams and fight for the country. Ruse was already waiting for the princess, trying to calm his trembling hands, because he knew that this moment would decide not only his fate. Hinel greets Ruse, she smiles, and at that moment all the princess's worries seem insignificant. She believes in the future. Hinel returns the prince's cloak and apologizes for yesterday. her voice trembling as she explains that she did not mean to offend him. The prince doesn't even want to know her name, and he hasn't forgiven her for yesterday's incident. But in his heart, he wants to look into her eyes one more time. He has conditions too, and knows that he cannot allow himself to open up until he is sure of sincerity and determination. He has a question for the princess that torments his soul and does not give him peace. He wonders if she can accept him like this. Ruz asks the princess about her betrothed, because he feels that her heart may be tied to someone else, and he is a pawn. Vianth believes that the princess will be better off with the count than with him, because the count has everything she is looking for: status, influence. The princess cannot explain the reasons for her actions, since Ruz will not believe her and in the time loop, but she wants to save the baby. She remembers how cruelly the count treated her when he threw her off a cliff and killed her and their child, which she did not expect from him. Hinel wants to become Ruz's wife and is ready to be a worthy spouse, but to do this, she needs to overcome her fears and doubts. Ruz warns her that she will only get a title since he is not interested in women, but a child from him is something new. The prince's conditions are that he will not even touch Hinel, although something in his soul has trembled, and he is playing hard to get in front of her. Another of his conditions is that he will not give the child power if Hinel gives birth to him, and she faces a difficult choice, creating her own family. Hinel agrees, but anxiety is growing in her heart because she understands that such a sacrifice could cost her more than just her personal happiness. The prince will propose to her tomorrow at the ball, in the glitter of chandeliers and the whispers of envious guests who will drag her into political games. Ruz says goodbye to Hinel coldly, his voice trembling with emotion, and there is joy in his eyes, because this farewell is not forever. Dea waits for her mistress, every moment filling her heart with anxiety and worry about what might happen between them. She asks how the conversation went, hoping to hear news that will change everything, and is eager to see if the venture was a success. Hinel told her faithful servant everything, sharing her experiences and fears, and there was a kind of relief in her voice. Dea is worried about what Count Zederfil will say about this, because his opinion has always been important to Hinel, and he will not be delighted. The main character is worried about the upcoming wedding, realizing that this is also a test for her feelings with the prince. Dea encourages the main character, assuring her that all difficulties can be overcome, and that this day will be the beginning of a new stage in her life. Dea was inspired by the idea of making the princess beautiful, deciding to organize an unforgettable wedding preparation full of magic. The beautiful castle is getting ready for the ball, and it creates a magical atmosphere, foreshadowing an unforgettable evening in the life of the princess. The maid borrowed jewelry from Hinel's mother, hoping that the princess would become more beautiful and magnificent at the ball. She combs Hinel's hair slowly and carefully, trying not to hurt her. Hinel is shocked that her mother gave her such a valuable gift, because it was not just a thing, but a symbol of family traditions and love. The ball begins. Guests in bright outfits fill the hall, expecting an unforgettable night of dancing and fun. The main character arrives at the ball, dazzling in her new dress, and looks around anxiously. A woman dressed in a yellow dress, quite fashionable and with a devilish smile on her face, approaches her. This is the king's daughter, whose name is Selah, and she is the local gossip. She looks at the main character's dress. Hinel greets her, and she notices her new look and admires how stylish she looks in her new dress. Selah's friends ask if she is worried if she is rejected, and that Hinel is more important to her, not to miss the opportunity. Hinel's mood is spoiled because of these little girls, despite her luxurious dress and the attention of those around her, and the girls leave. Suddenly, someone comes up to her from behind, blocking the light from the chandelier and whispering something in her ear, placing a hand on her shoulder. The villain appeared, grinning ominously and preparing his insidious plan to seduce the princess. The villain notices a scratch on the bride's hand, hidden under the lace of the glove, and now he has many questions for the main character. He grabs the girl's hand, squeezing it until it hurts. The girl doesn't like his touch, and she prepares to respond to him. The villain asks where she got the wound from. He is tormented by doubts about whether his bride is faithful to him and where she was last night. Hinel brazenly lies to Phil, hoping that he will not find out the truth about what really happened that night in the chambers of Prince Ruz Viant. The Count is unhappy because his plans have once again been thwarted by unforeseen circumstances, and Hinel can no longer be fooled. Phil wants to kiss her wound to convey his tenderness and comfort, hoping that it will help her heal faster. Hinel yanks her hand away from him, determined not to let him control her life any longer. Phil tells her that he embarrassed her in front of the guests, and his voice is full of feigned regret. Suddenly, their conversation is interrupted by loud footsteps, causing them both to become alert and exchange puzzled glances. Prince Vian approaches them, his face glowing with a friendly smile, and in his eyes, curiosity about what has captivated them so much in conversation. He sought out Hinel, hoping that she could explain the country's traditions and allay his growing anxiety in the unfamiliar environment. Unexpectedly, Wyatt becomes concerned about her arm wound, noticing how blood is slowly soaking through the bandage, and he feigns concern. He specifically says in front of the Count that the wound is because of him, because he could not allow her life to be in danger because of him. Vianth kisses Hinel's hand tenderly, his lips touching her skin with such care that she feels the warmth seep into her. The Count is jealous, and a fire lights up in his eyes that he cannot ignore. He loses control over his emotions. Viante is indignant at what Phil allows himself to do, his voice trembling with anger when he shamelessly interferes in their relationship. Phil calls Vianth a boor for his lack of etiquette, pointing with disdain at his inappropriate words and actions towards Hinel. Phil believes that kissing a girl's hand is indecent, as such a gesture violates personal space and is an outdated ritual. An argument begins between them, their voices become louder and emotions become heated. A fight between them is brewing. Two rivals are ready to kill each other, their eyes are full of rage, and the tension in the air is so strong that everyone is scared. But their sweet conversation is interrupted by the king, who entered the hall with a majestic air. Many of the courtiers fell silent in his presence. He witnesses their conflict, glares at both of them, and demands that they stop the fight immediately. The king wants to understand the situation and, addressing each of the rivals in turn, demands to explain the reasons for their conflict. Vianth asks the king if he can ask for Hinel's hand, assuring him that his respect for her family will make him a worthy candidate. Phil reports that the princess promised to give an answer today, and his voice trembles with excitement because his future depends on this decision. Hinel is unhappy that Phil has already asked the king for his consent to their marriage, as she believes that this is her conscious choice. The Count looks forward to defeating Vianth, confident that his manipulations will lead to the princess choosing him over Ruza. But Viante is adamant, determined to protect his feelings and not succumb to the Count's provocations, despite his tricks. The king is surprised that they cannot share Hinel between themselves, and watching the tension between the Count and Vianth makes him feel uneasy. The moment came from which it all began, the choice of a husband, and Hinel realized that this was not just a question about the future, but a test. The king does not understand why Vianth is in a hurry to choose a bride, because he has time to think about his feelings and relationships. The courtiers try to understand the prince's choice when he has not yet met her sisters, and their whispers become increasingly confused. The princess wants to know what the prince has forgotten, that behind his silence, there is something important that can change not only their relationship. Viant says Phil should receive an apology because his actions led to misunderstandings that destroyed trust. Vianth says that his father ordered him to burn the palace and take the Hinel sisters as hostages, but he dared to disobey him. But the prince himself restrained himself and cannot forgive the fact that some count laughs at him because this undermines his authority as a ruler. The king sees the quarrel as a conflict between countries that could lead to serious diplomatic consequences and even war. Phil is unhappy with Father Hinel's order, as he considers it unfair and overly strict. Under pressure from the king, Phil is forced to apologize to the prince, although deep down he feels that his feelings were not justified. Viant says that there is only one way to defuse the situation, to free the Count from his status as the main character's fiancé. He suddenly announces his marriage to Hinel, saying that he will make her his wife instead of the arrogant and nasty Count. Phil is about to explode with rage. His anger is boiling inside like an erupting volcano. He cannot forgive the public humiliation. Hinel tells her father that she is not a prize that can be passed between men, but an independent person with her own dreams. The girl's mother decides to dissuade the prince from this idea, realizing that his passion could have serious consequences for their family. But the prince says that his decision is gratitude for the return of his dear thing, and Hinel deserves to be his wife. The king tells his daughter to be more responsible and gives his consent, asking his daughter not to forget her duty to the country. Hinel agrees with her father, but in her heart she is happy with the victory, realizing that this step opens up new horizons for her. Phil is furious with his rival, his anger boiling over as he remembers all the humiliations and provocations he has caused him. Vianth understands Phil Zeter's rage and sincerely sympathizes with the princess that she was almost married to such a hypocrite. Viant decides to resolve the situation peacefully, realizing that conflict will only make things worse, and he suggests that Phil find a compromise. Hinel understands that he is ready to offer the Count something more than just words, and that his intentions are serious. Count Phil's objections do not bother Prince Ruse, since he is confident in his rightness and is ready to defend his ideas. Phil is a midge. The prince suggests that the Count choose another wife for himself, that this is better. He believes that the Count will be able to find a worthy match among the ladies. Phil makes a random choice, pointing his finger at the first person he meets, relying on luck, intuition, and charm. Hinel thinks that it is she, and her heart is filled with anxiety because she always does not want to repeat her fate and be killed. Count Phil chose the girl who was Ruse's wife from their previous time loop, thus taking revenge on him for the engagement and Hinel. Hinel realized she was able to change her destiny when she saw how her bold decisions opened up a different course of her story. The crown prince approaches her, his eyes full of determination and tenderness, and at that moment all her dreams of romance are real. The action moves to a garden, where fragrant flowers and soft light create a magical atmosphere, filling the air with romance. The prince tells her that he has fulfilled his end of the deal, and now he is ready to fulfill her cherished wish, but she must too. The princess thanks him for his help, and the prince suddenly lies down on a bench next to her, complaining that he is not used to the weather in their country. The main character understands that in the prince's homeland it is always winter, and there has never been hot weather, and she is afraid of what will happen next. Hinel sees a cooing couple, a man and a pregnant woman, and in their eyes she notices sincere joy and hope. She remembers her child, whom she never gave birth to, and her heart squeezes with pain. The memories become more and more difficult. Hinel cries, feeling the tears rolling down her cheeks, mixing with the autumn air, and at this moment she is very weak. Vaillanth notices her tears, and unable to remain indifferent, sits closer, trying to understand what is troubling her heart. The girl lies to him about the reason for her tears. Vaillanth won't believe in the time loop and her death with the baby, and tells him about her mother. She tells that the king does not love her mother, despite the royal title she received after giving birth to Hinel. The prince says that he does not like bad rumors about the princess and falls silent, thinking about something of his own and gloomy as usual. Hinel thinks that she shouldn't have told the prince about her past, because now she's afraid that his attitude towards her will change. But Vaillanth unexpectedly does not share the bad opinion about the princess's origins. A person's value is not determined that way. Vaillanth doesn't like anything about the unfamiliar country, but he wants to take the girl with him because she has become a light for him. He doesn't intend to play the fool in love, but wants to convince everyone of his love. Hinel is grateful that the prince is sincerely concerned about her and is even interested in her mother's health and doesn't care about rumors about her. Ruse's wife from the previous time loop, Mia, congratulates the king's daughter on her engagement, sincerely wishing the main character happiness. We are told about Count Phil's future wife. Mia is younger than the princess and has a calm character. They could be friends. Mia feels awkward that Hinel's ex-fiancé chose her as his wife because she can't do that. Their relationship is just a shadow in politics. Hinel is surprised that Mia has long dreamed of marrying the Count, but their friendship can become even stronger because of understanding. The main character didn't even know that Mia was in love with Count Phil because she always skillfully hid her feelings from the courtiers. She is afraid that Mia will repeat her fate, that Count Phil will mercilessly kill her, doing the same thing to Hinel and the baby. Suddenly, someone calls Hinel by name, and turning around, she sees a familiar face that evokes mixed feelings in her. The Count. Phil suddenly wants to talk to her, which does not bode well for Princess Hinel, the king's youngest daughter. Phil wants to get the princess back, but to do this, he will have to overcome not only the barriers between them, but also restore trust. Phil decided to get Hinel because she belonged to him, and he was ready to do anything to prove his false love to her. Hinel is scared because unknown dangers lie before her, and the shadow of the past still haunts her. She is afraid that the Count will pursue her, that he will repeat his fate, that he will kill her and her child, and the kingdom will plunge into chaos. The prince does not understand why she is sweating, and looking at her pale face and trembling figure, he begins to worry about her condition. Hinel lies to Vaillanth that she was looking for him, although in reality her thoughts were occupied with something else, and she was afraid of the one standing behind her. Phil follows the main character, hiding in the shadows of the castle. His gaze does not bode well for the poor girl. He is like a wolf. Ruse notices Phil's gaze and understands the situation, realizing that his observation is not accidental, but hides something more. The dancing begins, and the atmosphere is filled with music that makes you forget about your worries and immerse yourself in the rhythm of the royal dance. Ruse offers the king's daughter a dance and waits for her response with hope. realizing that this moment could be key in their relationship. Ruse also tells the king that it would be a good idea for two couples to dance, suggesting that it would create an atmosphere of friendly rivalry. Phil glares at him, but there's nothing he can do. He's forced, with a heavy heart, to adhere to etiquette and submit to the prince's will. Two couples dance, their movements merging into a harmonious dance, reflecting the spirit of unity that reigns in the hall and causing delight. Viante pretends to be the princess's lover, cleverly playing his role to win the trust of the royal family and the princess. Hinel understands this, and as she watches Viante play, she begins to guess his true motives, deciding that she will play along with him. The dance of the princess and the prince is just a show for the audience behind the masquerade of fun, hiding tension and intrigue underneath. Phil doesn't believe in their feelings, thinking that it's just a passing fancy, and decides that he must stop them. Phil won't let the princess go just like that, because their relationship is not only about emotions, but also about politics, and the prince is an obstacle to everything. Vianth understands why the princess doesn't like Phil, because his arrogance and self-confidence create a negative aura around them. He encourages the main character, assuring her that she has all the necessary qualities to overcome difficulties. During the dance, the prince lifts the main character off the floor and presses his body against hers. The heroine is embarrassed by the prince's actions. Zether Phil does not approve of this behavior, believing that the prince is too close to the princess and allows himself liberties. The prince's further actions are more provocative, and he begins to openly challenge Phil, provoking him into conflict. The young man's actions are open and attract everyone's attention. He does not hide his intentions. His provocations are even more dangerous. Vianth kisses Hinel on purpose to make the prince jealous and to demonstrate his confidence, attracting attention. Hinel didn't expect this, and instantly her face turned bright red, a mixture of surprise and embarrassment on her face. However, the girl likes this game of a couple in love, and she begins to realize that Viant is better than the Count in a romantic sense. The envious women are ready to tear the girl apart, whispering poisonous gossip to each other and plotting to undermine her confidence. Phil also witnessed the kiss, his heart beating faster when he realized that there was something more going on between them than just a game. He is in a stupor, unable to believe what just happened, and he envies Viantu Ruse, who has won Hinel's heart. The wedding ceremony takes place in the Temple of the God of Fire, where there is an atmosphere of magic and holiness, and the sounds of melodies fill the air. Willow bark is a symbol of newlyweds, personifying the flexibility and strength of their love, as well as the ability to overcome difficulties in love. Willow bark intertwines the bonds of the newlyweds, creating a strong and tender symbol of their unity. In love, supporting each other is important. The bride sincerely believes that this time she will protect her future baby, surrounding him with love and care, and will do everything for him. Her anxiety is noticeable. She expects something important and alarming to happen at any moment. She trembles easily and she is gloomy. The prince asks why she is nervous. She becomes embarrassed and replies that she is simply not used to attention, especially like his. The priest suddenly stops and no longer gives a boring speech about tying the knot of lovers. He looks at Prince Ruse. The groom is emitting dark energy, which is a bad sign, and the priest thinks that this marriage could turn into something terrible for Hinel. But Vianth is not afraid of the church's prejudices. He decides to follow his heart, relying on his strength and faith in true love. Ruse expects a trick from the priest, because behind his calm face there are many secrets, and he knows that in this world, everything is not simple. For some reason, Ruse took out an almoner, a silver thing that hides dark magic and suppresses it from people's eyes. The priest sprinkled holy water on Vianth, reciting spells that would protect him from evil and magic. But it was as if the dark energy had never existed, and the priest was left looking like a fool. The groom wants to end the ceremony quickly, as the country's hospitality is disgusting, and he is considered a Satanist. In the evening, the prince is angry with the old man. His voice sounds angry and shrill, because he almost showed everyone that the prince is a sorcerer. Evan asks the master who he is angry with, because he could not help but notice how the tension in the room was growing, and the prince's anger too. Evan notices an almoner wound on the prince's finger, and realizes that this minor injury could be a serious problem in the future. Viant thinks that the blood on his finger is nothing, but looking at the tense expression on Evan's face, he suddenly feels uneasy. Viant says clergy are taking notice of the ghost worship, and he fears the rumors could cause panic in society. Vianth carries an almoner with him to absorb dark magic, hoping that no one will guess about his magical abilities. Evan asks the prince if it would be better to talk to the king before leaving. The prince has been poisoned, and he needs to leave the country urgently. The question arises of what to do with the princess, because her fate now depends on whether she can maintain the trust of the people. The prince becomes ill and does not answer the question. His face turns pale and his head spins. Meanwhile, Hanel announces her mother's departure, leaving behind an atmosphere of uncertainty and anxiety. The mother knows that this is the last time she will see her daughter, and her heart fills with bitterness as she hugs Hanel. The main character wants to spend more time with her mother and tries to remember her smile, voice, and the warmth of her hugs in her heart. The mother gives the main character a gift, a carefully preserved old box containing a symbol of love and marriage. Hanel remembers that her mother gave her this gift when she married Count Phil, so that the marriage would be successful and good. This love potion, prepared according to an ancient recipe, promises to awaken the deepest feelings and for a successful birth. Zeder began to lose interest in the princess after the wedding, so she used a potion, hoping to bring back his attention and passion, but she says goodbye to her mother, feeling her heart heavy from the upcoming changes, and hopes that her choice will bring her happiness. The princess is waiting for her husband, and in her heart there is a mixture of hope and anxiety, because she does not know how he will react to her decision to leave. Her parents come up to her, their faces full of care and support, and her father reminds her of the importance of being true to her feelings and choices. The king asks his daughter to be careful, his voice full of concern for the kingdom as he explains that she is the princess of the country. The king's wife believes that her daughter will write her letters, telling her the details of her married life and will not forget her every day. Mia also says goodbye to Hanel, her eyes almost full of tears as she hugs her friend, whispering words of support and believing in her. Mia wanted to spend more time with Hanel, to remember every moment of their friendship, to share secrets. Hanel calls her friend, and there is such warm sincerity in these words that Mia is happy and proud of the friendship between them. The girls hug, and this tender gesture contains their entire friendship, support, understanding, and unconditional love for each other. The carriage takes Hanel to her husband's kingdom, and green fields and majestic forests flash by outside the window. But in her heart, there are mixed feelings. Dea cries, her tears rolling down her cheeks, reflecting the deep pain of loss and a sense of hopelessness. Dea is angry with her mistress. Her anger is overflowing, and in her soul there appears a desire to express all the grievances that have accumulated for too long. Dea did not want to let the princess go without her, because their friendship was her support in difficult times, and she did not want to be alone. Hanel understands that she has betrayed the count, and this realization torments her soul, because she has broken the trust that was once between them. Meanwhile, Count Phil realizes that the princess and the prince have not slept together yet, and he decides to interfere in their relationship, planning something evil. Evan tells Hanel that Vianth didn't leave her. He just found himself in a difficult situation, and that his feelings for her remain strong. The princess is grateful for Evan's care, and, feeling his sincerity, shares her experiences and hopes for the future. The maid calmed down when she realized that her worries were in vain and could now focus on helping the princess. Hanel asks Dea if she is upset about Vianth's sudden departure, since Vianth didn't even warn her about his departure. The women are greeted by Ruza's servants when they arrive, with honors and respect, inviting them to enter Ruza's house. The main character asks the servants if the prince is inside. Her voice trembles with excitement. She hopes that she will be able to see him sooner. Viscount Duen hesitates to answer. He understands that every word can change the atmosphere of the meeting, and does not know what to say to Hanel. Evan explains that they are tired and asks to be taken inside the house, adding that the long journey is exhausting and they need to rest a little. Evan tells Hanel that her husband does not get along with his family, and this is reflected in his behavior and mood with others. He tells Hanel why the prince left so soon without her, explaining that he had urgent business and was poisoned. Evan says that it was necessary to quickly bring Hanel to the prince's house, since important conversations and married life awaited her there. The princess thinks about her husband, realizing that there are misunderstandings between them and that they need to restore the lost closeness. She realized that the prince had been poisoned and that he was only strong on the outside, hiding his vulnerability behind a mask of confidence. Dea asks the princess if His Majesty has come to dinner, and she decides not to tell Dea that the prince has magic and is injured. The main character lies to her faithful friend that she saw her husband at dinner, that he was late due to yet another government matter. The maid is indignant that the spouses will sleep separately, because this contradicts all the traditions and expectations of this marriage. Dea wants to lie in wait for the prince to finally find out what is really going on in his heart and why he is like this. The main character is pleased with Dea's care, because in a world full of intrigue and anxiety, Her sincere attention and support are a source of hope. The main character fell asleep, plunging into sweet dreams, where worries and fears left her alone and with thoughts of Prince Viante. Hinel is kidnapped in the dark shadows of the night by a stranger, leaving behind only the whisper of the wind and dragged into an unknown direction into the forest. She is carried through a dark forest where tree branches reach out to her like hands, and the sounds of the night create an atmosphere of mystery. The girl discreetly leaves a ribbon of her hair to be found, hoping that this small trace will help return her home. Prince Viant Rouge woke up from his sleep, and he is better. There is no more pain or fever, and he is ready to live on in this world. Evan is happy about Viant's awakening because his friend has finally returned to life, and a spark of hope lit up in Evan's eyes that they are together. Evan says that the move is complete, and now they can finally take care of the state affairs that await the prince. Evan also asks the master not to worry about the princess, assuring him that she is safe and cared for. Evan asks Deja, who runs through the door, what happened as she is scared and crying again. Dea tells about the kidnapping of the princess, saying that she did not find the girl in her room. The prince is wondering whether he should assemble a search party to find Hinel, or whether he can handle it alone. Evan doesn't understand where the sick prince was going alone, because his health left much to be desired, and he was risking his life. Rouge's assistant, Evan, shouts to the prince that the disappearance of 2 people will be noticed by everyone in the castle. Prince Rouge asks Evan to lie that he and the princess are on their honeymoon. Evan doesn't know if this lie will be believed. He worries that the truth might come out and it will lead to unpleasant consequences. Rouge guesses who stole Hinel. He hopes to solve the mystery of the girl's disappearance. Rouge thinks it could be either Count Zeter, who has a grudge against him, or a new face, the 3rd prince, who swore to kill Viant Rouge a long time ago. As time goes on, the princess becomes more and more in trouble, and Rouge realizes that he needs to act quickly or she will die. After his mother's death, his stepmother brought her son to Viant's house, and since then the boy's life has changed forever because of him. Viant's half-brother became heir to the throne, a position that gave him not only power, but also control over Viant's life. Viant's half-brother wants to take everything from him, turning him into his subordinate and competitor for the throne at the same time. Viant was saved only by war, as he was a burden to his family, and in the chaos of battles, he found an opportunity to demonstrate his abilities. In the past, there were many disputes in the country of Vianta about the heir to the throne, and Vianta defended his honor and dreamed of freedom from oppression. The main character wants to know where she is because the surroundings are unfamiliar, and her memories of the night are vague. She is met by Count Phil in the castle's grand hall, his face glowing with light from a huge crystal chandelier. Count Phil is glad that the princess has not been touched by Vianth yet, because he knows that if Vianth had touched her, she would no longer be the same. Phil wants to free a princess who is not a royal, because she is the only key to the power over power he desires. She breaks away from him with a scream, seeing cold calculation in his eyes, and not salvation. The count orders his servant to catch the girl, and takes her to the throne room, where he has already prepared a plan for his cunning game. The girl runs away into the icy cold, where every turn is fraught with danger, and every sound echoes in her heart. The girl does not want to repeat her fate, and does not want to become a plaything in the hands of this insidious count. But she falls in the snow, and choking from cold and fatigue, desperately tries to call for help, but no one will help her. The main character does not want to go with the servant to Phil, because he thought that he was not just a servant, but an accomplice of the count, and that salvation was not waiting for her. The count calls out to her in a voice full of flattering tenderness, but in his eyes, she sees only cold calculation. The count asks the servant to stop holding Hinel. Although her hands are already blue, she cannot hold back her tears. He pretends to take care of her, promising her a warm fireplace, soft pillows, and a delicious dinner. The kidnapper asks how much he will be paid, not hiding his greed and cynicism, which disgustingly hits the girl's soul. The main villain notices the girl's wounds. He turns his gaze to the kidnapper, asking where she got them from. The kidnapper justifies himself, saying that it was not his doing, but he does not want to believe him. But the princess suddenly kills him with a knife that she secretly hid in her clothes, and her eyes shine not with fear, but with the furious fire of revenge. Phil says he has his eye not on his property, but on hers, and that her absence means a loss of power for him. The action moves to the estate of Count Zeter, where in a cold hall with high windows reflecting the light of the winter sun. The count personally washes Heinel's feet, but his touch is cold as ice, and she feels that he does not want to save her, but to humiliate her. He asks if the princess is scared, but in his eyes she sees not concern, but pleasure at her fear. The main character asked what kind of place this was Dot, and looked with alarm at the dark corridors that stretched beyond the door, like a path into the unknown. The main villain does not want to give up Princess Vianta, because he knows that this will lead to the loss of his power, and he is ready to do anything to keep her. The princess is furious, and her eyes sparkle not only with anger, but also with a frantic thirst for revenge. The Count wants to spend his wedding night with Hinel, even though she has not yet recovered from her wounds, and her body is trembling with fear. Phil is ready to sleep with Hinel, but she feels that he does not love her, but just wants to possess her body, and this thought is disgusting. Perhaps the kidnapping of the princess is an order from the Empire, with which Ruse does not get along, because the Empire has long dreamed of power over this region. The main villain notices that the princess's thoughts are not about him, and that in his eyes there is not a jealous fire, but a cold rage. Phil pushed Hinel onto the bed, and she felt the cold of his hands covering her body, and horror gripped her soul. Phil decided to sleep with the princess before Viant, but she feels that he does not love her, but simply wants to possess her body. Is Hinel waiting for a repeat of her fate, or will she find the strength within herself to overcome fear and horror in order to become not a victim, but a warrior? The eagle flies high above the forest, its wings scattering the clouds, and its keen eyes reflect the sunset, painting the sky in blue tones. The bird returned to its owner, carrying a small bundle of leather in its beak, and its owner, who had been watching its flight from behind an open window. The prince sends an eagle to search for the girl. He knows that only this bird can penetrate into the deepest gorges and find her. He flies into the sky, and at the moment of takeoff, his wings cast a shadow on the prince's face, as if promising to return with good news. The prince calls on magic, but not on the dark forces, but on the power of nature, asking it to help him find his beloved and protect her. He discovers his wife's footprint on the ground, still damp with dew, and a glimmer of hope dawns in his heart, coloring his sadness with a hint of expectation. Meanwhile, Hinel says she doesn't like Phil, her words sounding cold and distant, and there's more than just disgust in them. She believes that their relationship is strange because of her father, and although she tries to be polite to Philip, her heart is filled with disgust for him, and she dreams of nothing but returning home. Hinel wants to change into more comfortable clothes so that she can feel more free and not think about Phil's views. Phil has sent away all the servants and wants to heat her bath himself, but in his gaze she sees not concern, but a desire to possess her body. While he is in the bath, Hinel decides to escape. She feels that this is the only chance for freedom, and a spark of hope lights up in her eyes. She is preparing to escape, and there is no longer any indecision in her movements, only determination and a sense of her own strength. But Phil suddenly returns, and Hinel freezes in fear, her heart pounding in her chest like a bird in a cage. He wants to stop her, and in his eyes she sees not love, but a thirst for power over her, and she understands that she needs to run away immediately. Hinel confidently climbs down the balcony. Her movements are quick and dexterous, as if she were no longer a fragile girl, but a wild cat. Her escape is interrupted by Phil grabbing her hand, and in his eyes she sees not disappointment, but a rage that engulfs him entirely. Phil asks what she was trying to do, and his voice is not curious but threatening, and a cold sweat runs down her back. He is furious that she tried to deceive him, and his rage becomes even stronger when he sees in her eyes anything but regret. Phil reminds her that a servant's daughter should be grateful for love, and his words sound insincere. Phil pushes Hinel to the floor, his hands hard and cold as statues, and there is not a drop of tenderness in his movements, only anger. He wants to show Hinel where her place is, and in his eyes she sees not a man, but a beast ready to tear apart its victim. Phil threatens the princess, and in his voice you can hear not only anger, but also despair. He understands that he is losing control of the situation. Hinel realized that if she repeated her escape, Phil would not spare her, and he was capable of anything to keep her by his side. At the same time, the prince finds the kidnapper's corpse, and a fiery rage lights up in his eyes. He feels that he must punish him. The magic leads him to Phil's mansion, and he feels like he can't stand ignorance any longer. He has to see her with his own eyes. Vianth believes that the princess is there, and this belief gives him the strength to continue moving forward. He knows that he must save her. Vianth may lose control due to his magical flow being disrupted, and the whispers of fear being heard in his soul. Phil warns the princess that if she runs away again, she will not be able to walk, and in his eyes she sees not despair, but a threat. Hinel is worried that Viant will not accept her. She knows that he does not know the truth, that she is not free, but imprisoned in this prison. She decides to stun the enemy when she hears him return, and a fiery spark of hope lights up in her eyes. But this is not an enemy, but Viant, and in his eyes she sees not joy, but horror. He has already seen her kidnapper, and he knows that she is not free. The girl is shocked that it is Viant, and a fiery spark of joy lights up in her eyes. She knows that he has not turned away from her. She is very happy to see him, and happiness sparkles in her eyes. She knows that he has not forgotten about her. He came to save her. She apologizes for her overjoyed expression, and there is confusion in her voice. She is afraid that she did the wrong thing. Viant wants to dress her, and in his eyes she sees not only care but also respect. He doesn't want her to feel awkward. They decide to leave while there is no one around, and there is hope sparkling in their eyes. They know that this is their last chance. Viant picks up the princess in his arms, and in his eyes she sees not only care but also love. He does not want her to feel insecure. But Phil ruins everything, and in his eyes she sees not only anger but also despair. He knows that he is losing her, and he is ready to do anything to keep her. Viant says he suspected Phil was psychotic, and there is not only confidence in his voice, but he could not imagine that he was capable of such things. Ruse will not forgive Phil for Hanel, and there is a fiery rage in his eyes. He knows that Phil has crossed the line, that he has gone too far. The villain calls for security, and in his voice you can hear not only anger but also panic. He understands that he is losing control, that his plans are falling apart. Ruse asks the princess to stay here, and in his eyes she sees not only concern but also love. He knows that she is in danger. The rivals decide to deal with each other, and their eyes sparkle with fiery rage. They know that they are enemies. The count is not going to answer the prince's questions, and there is a cold gleam in his eyes. He knows that the prince is trying to deceive him. A fight ensues, and there is a sense of inevitability in the air, both opponents knowing that this is just the beginning. The villain is wounded, and his eyes sparkle not only with pain, but also with anger. He understands that he lost the battle, but not the war, and he is ready to take revenge. Rose wants to know who ordered the kidnapping of Hanel, and in his eyes there is not only anger, but also sadness. This is not just a kidnapping. Ruse asks if Phil is expecting security, and there is interest in his voice as well as a threat. He says that he killed all the guards, and not only pride sparkles in his eyes, he is ready to carry this burden on his shoulders. The interrogation continues, and there is a feeling of tension in the air. Ruse will not calm down. He knows that Phil is hiding something. Vian listens to Phil's answer, and his eyes sparkle not only with interest, but also with rage. He knows that Phil is not well, that he is sick. He won't forgive Phil for touching his wife, and there's a fiery rage in his eyes. He knows Phil has crossed the line. Viante is ready to kill Phil, and in his eyes there is not only anger, but also despair. He knows that Phil will always be dangerous for his wife. The princess finds them, and her eyes sparkle not only with horror, but also with tenderness. She knows that Vianth does not want to harm Phil. The princess wants to stop Vianth, and in her voice one can hear not only a plea, but also a threat. She knows that Vianth is not capable of killing her. The enemy is defeated, and there is a feeling of victory in the air. But sadness remains in the hearts, because the price of victory is too high. Vianth notices her, and his eyes sparkle not only with surprise, but also with fear. He knows that she can hinder him. He takes off Phil's clothes and gives them to the princess, and in his eyes there sparkles not only pain, but also hope. The girl gets dressed. Her hands are shaking slightly, but her eyes are already lit with determination that this moment is not just a return to her previous life. Ruse wants to keep the count alive, realizing that behind his cold appearance there are more than just secrets. They leave the mansion looking back at its majestic walls, full of secrets and memories. Vianth believes that the count does not deserve such an easy death, and decides that his punishment should be more painful. Vianth understands that there are other villains behind the count, and in order to stop their insidious plans, he needs to be more careful. The prince says that the princess is stronger than she appears, and that beneath her soft exterior lies determination and wisdom. The prince changes his mind about Hanel, realizing that behind her doll-like appearance lies deep devotion and courage. They are found by the faithful Evan, who, despite the dangers and obstacles, did not leave his friends in trouble and is now ready to help them. The prince asks him to investigate the estate to find out who is behind the intrigues and manipulations. Vianth asks Evan if there is a horse for Hanel, as he understands that she will need a reliable companion. He takes her in his arms, hugging her carefully to convey his warmth and support to her, and whispers soothing words. Evan will carry out the order and find clothes for the girl, carefully choosing each item so that they not only fit. The prince carries Hinel to the horse, trying to be as careful as possible not to disturb her, and quietly encourages her. Vianth asks if she can ride a horse, watching her reaction closely to see how confident she is in her skills. Since the main character doesn't know how, the young man does everything himself, carefully lifting her onto the horse and showing her how to sit properly in the saddle. The young man feels embarrassed by her touching him, and he feels his heart beat faster when she gently touches his back. Hinel will be learning to ride when they return, and she is looking forward to that moment, dreaming of freedom. The prince asks if Hinel wants to be his apprentice, and there is genuine curiosity in his voice and hope in his eyes. They return to the prince's homeland, and as they approach familiar lands, a mixture of excitement and anxiety flares up in her heart. The main characters are driving home, enjoying the fresh air and the beauty of the surrounding landscape, and in their hearts, there is hope for a bright future. Hinel is embarrassed to wake the prince because he is sleeping so peacefully, and she does not want to disturb his peace. Their journey is nearing its end. The prince sleeps restlessly, his face distorted by a slight shadow of anxiety, as if he sees something in a dream that torments him. He scolds Hinel for her carelessness, pointing out how important it is to be careful and cautious in their dangerous world. Hinel thinks that the prince is in pain and, sensing his anxiety, decides to do everything possible to dispel his worries. Hinel does not understand her embarrassment when she meets the prince's gaze, because in his eyes she sees not only anxiety, but also some kind of tenderness. She and the prince are in an awkward situation when the silence between them becomes too loud. The tension in the air grows. Hinel asks Vianth how he found her, since she was sure that she had hidden well enough, and her curiosity grows. The prince found Hinel by the ribbon she left behind that accidentally got caught on a tree branch, and when he saw it, he realized that it was a sign. Hinel is glad that it was her husband who found her, because his presence filled her heart with warmth and hope. The protagonist no longer answers her questions, and the silence between them becomes unbearable, like an invisible barrier. Vianth was sick and tired, his body no longer obeyed him, and his thoughts were confused in a fog, leaving only a feeling of helplessness and anxiety. Vianta is feverish, and the heat penetrates every cell of his body, his thoughts wandering between memories of the past. The carriage stops, and the dull sound of wheels creaking on the pavement is heard in the silence as the doors swing open. The servants carry Viant into the house, carefully carrying him on a stretcher, and the air is filled with anxiety mixed with the smell of medicine. Viantu is helped to undress, his wet clothes are carefully removed, and every gesture is full of care. The servants leave the princess with her husband, closing the doors behind them, and in the silence of the room, only the quiet breathing of Vianth is heard. The girl thinks about how to bring down the prince's fever, feverishly going over in her memory all the recipes and potions she knows. The boy asks the girl to leave, his voice shaking with confusion and pain, and in his eyes you can see the desire to protect her from the darkness within him. He doesn't even want to listen to her. His anger and disappointment wash over him like a storm, and he prefers to immerse himself in silence. Hinel wants to help the prince with clothes, but her hands are shaking with excitement because she understands that this is not just a concern for appearance. The young man wakes up, slowly opening his eyes, and the first thing he sees is a girl standing next to him, her face full of hope. He grabs her hand, feeling how the warmth of her palm gives him confidence, and at that moment, he is ready to fight for his future. Vianth pressed her to the bed, his heart pounding and determination shining in his eyes. Their connection grew stronger in that moment. He tells the girl that he will not let her go, and there is such strength and confidence in his voice that she feels her fears melt away. Hinel listens to him attentively, her eyes full of expectation, and at that moment she understands that his every word is a promise. The young man asks her to leave Dot. His voice trembles with emotion because he knows that this decision can protect her from danger. Vianth wants her to leave because he realizes that in this world full of threats, her safety is more important than his own feelings. He threatens her, his eyes flashing with rage, but inside him, excitement is raging because he knows that these words are just a mask. Ruse was ready to leave her, despite the fact that every moment spent next to her filled his heart with warmth. The princess stops him, her voice shaking with emotion and her eyes shining with determination, because she knows she can't let him go. She is happy with everything. She feels that she has found her place in this world, where every moment fills her life with meaning. Hinel reminds him that she is his wife and that there is more than just tenderness in her voice, that their love is capable of overcoming any obstacles. Hinel is ready to fulfill her marital duties, realizing that this is not only a duty, but also an opportunity to make the relationship stronger. Nothing will stop Hinel because she is full of determination and faith in herself, ready to protect those she loves. Her tongue penetrates his mouth, causing waves of tenderness and passion that make their hearts beat in unison. Since childhood, Vianth has been afraid of his magic, realizing that its uncontrolled power has the ability to both create and destroy. Ruse wants to push his wife away, but his heart is filled with conflicting feelings and fear of losing this love. He gathers all his determination and, taking a deep breath, resolutely takes it, preparing to reveal everything that has long tormented his heart. Vianth kisses Hinel, feeling the warmth of her lips fill his soul with the hope and strength he had been searching for within himself for so long. Ruse wants to understand what kind of new feelings he is experiencing and immerses himself in thoughts, trying to sort out the streams of emotions. Why does he feel so good? He couldn't understand where this feeling of lightness and joy that overwhelmed him came from. Hinel suggests they wash together, and there is a playfulness in his voice that makes Ruse feel a little nervous. Ruse does not want to avoid Hinel, because in her company he feels alive and free, and every moment fills his heart with warmth. The bath is ready, steam rises into the air, creating a cozy atmosphere, and the aroma of essential oils fills the room. Hinel asks the maid for a screen to create a little privacy, allowing herself and Ruse to enjoy the atmosphere without prying eyes. But Ruse stops her, saying gently that he would prefer that they just enjoy the moment without any obstacles. He begins to undress slowly and confidently, as if every movement reveals not only his body, but also his sincere feelings. Hinel doesn't know what to do in such a piquant situation. Her heart is pounding with excitement and embarrassment, and her thoughts are confused. Hinel is offered to wash the prince, and although she feels a little unsure, deep down she is filled with curiosity. The prince reminds her that she wanted to do everything herself, and his words make Hinel smile slightly because they are so close. Clothes fly to the floor, and the air is filled with anticipation as Hinel and the prince finally come face to face. Hinel is offered to wash together, and her heart skips a beat from surprise. This simple but intimate request fills her with excitement. Ruse asks why she is so embarrassed, and Hinel, blushing slightly, replies that this feeling of closeness and openness scares her. Hinel struggles with embarrassment, her heart pounding in her chest, and her thoughts confused. This moment could change everything. She overcomes her shyness by taking a deep breath and looking resolutely into Ruzu's eyes, realizing that this step requires courage. She also undresses, feeling how the embarrassment gradually disappears, giving way to excitement and anticipation. In Ruzu's chest there are other feelings, mixed with excitement and tenderness. He understands that this moment is significant for both of them. He asks her to come out again, his voice confident, but in his eyes there is hope that this time will be the beginning of something special. He says that she did nothing to make her feel guilty, and that everything that happened between them only made his feelings stronger. Hinel feels like she is being avoided, and this anxiety grows with each passing moment, causing her to doubt her actions. She wonders why his mood has suddenly changed and tries to remember if something happened that could have changed it. Hinel is afraid that the prince will lose interest in her, and this thought torments her soul. How can she regain his attention? Vianta waits for the surprise with bated breath, hoping that this moment will be the beginning of something amazing and unforgettable. The princess undresses, feeling a light breeze playing on her skin, and at that moment, she is ready to let go of all her fears. She doesn't care what Ruse does to her, because she has already made the decision to follow her desires without looking back. Ruse washes and touches her wherever he wants, because she trusts him and knows he will never harm her. Passions are heating up, and every look, every touch becomes more intimate. Between them, there is a fire of passion. Hinel is ready to become a wife. She feels that she has found the person with whom she wants to share her life, and dreams of the future. The main character overcame her indecision and finally decided to take a step towards her dreams. Nothing can stop them, because they are full of determination and faith in their own strength, ready to overcome any obstacles on the way to their goal. Hinel enjoyed the passionate kiss, which ignited feelings in her that she had long forgotten and filled her heart with tenderness. But this was only a warm-up that ignited feelings in her that she had long forgotten and filled her heart with warmth and tenderness. The prince is afraid of hurting her, because his heart breaks at the thought that one mistake could destroy their fragile relationship. Vianth invites Hinel into bed, his voice soft and inviting, promising the comfort and closeness that can bring them closer. The kiss continues, filling the atmosphere with magic. Their lips merge in a dance of tenderness, and time seems to stop. Hinel breaks the kiss, pulling away for a moment to meet Vianth's gaze, a mixture of tenderness reflected in his eyes. The princess is embarrassed, her cheeks are flushed, and her gaze, lowered to the floor, betrays the excitement that she is trying to hide. She is ready to endure all this, as with Phil, despite internal doubts and fears, because sometimes you have to make sacrifices for the sake of love. But Viant is not him, and in his presence she feels her heart beat faster and her soul fill with hope. Hinel and Viant decide to continue despite all the doubts and obstacles, because in their hearts there burns a desire to become closer. Viant's touch is not like Phil's. It is full of lightness and tenderness, as if every gesture conveys warmth and care. No one can stop the passion between them because it flares up with every moment, filling their lives with energy and desire. With Vianth, Heinel has different feelings filled with lightness and joy. Each meeting with him opens up new horizons of emotions. Vianth wants her gaze to belong only to him, so that in every reflection of him she sees only his face. In the morning, Hinel is awakened by the soft rays of the sun penetrating through the curtains, and the gentle whisper of Vianth, who quietly calls her. Breakfast in bed awaits her, carefully served on a beautiful tray with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and hot meat. After a wild night, Viant offers her water, his voice soft and caring, as if he wants her to be able to experience the fullness of life again. Ruse is gentle with her, as if embracing her with his warmth, and his every look is full of care, as if he knows what she needs at this moment. The princess asks not to worry about the wounds from the count, assuring him that they are only temporary reminders of the ordeal she has gone through. The passion between them flares up with renewed vigor like sparks, filling the air with electricity and unbearable desire. Ruz asks her permission to do whatever he wants. His voice sounds quiet and confident. She is ready to share it with him. From love to hate, there is one step, and sometimes this step turns out to be the most difficult, because in the heart, chaos now reigns. Ruse recalls the events of the previous night, when every moment seemed filled with magic. The newlyweds sleep together, wrapped in a warm blanket, their breathing merging into a quiet symphony, and the world around them seems magical. They are both in awe of last night, where every look and touch was special, and just enjoying the moment that will remain in their memory forever. Hinel has a modest breakfast, enjoying the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and crispy meat. The prince offers her other meat, carefully placing on the plate juicy pieces that were prepared with special care. He also made her some fresh coffee, which filled the room with a cozy aroma, making her feel relaxed. They debate whether food would taste better at court, discussing various dishes and sharing their culinary preferences. Ruse says he found it difficult to eat, especially with so many tempting but unhealthy foods around. In the homeland of the Crown Prince, they love smoked meat, as it has a different, rich taste and adds a special touch to traditional dishes. The princess eats with pleasure, enjoying every bite of the exquisite dishes served on the royal table. She realizes that their morning, as a married couple, begins with quiet conversations over a cup of aromatic tea, with warm smiles. The girl thinks about why the prince's attitude towards her has changed and tries to understand whether something was the reason for his coldness. The king's daughter says that she has eaten, but in fact her thoughts are occupied with something completely different. She dreams of freedom. The crown princess asks how soon they are leaving with impatience in her voice, as she cannot wait to leave the castle walls. Ruse wants to repeat the events of the night when they first met each other, and the moments filled his heart with warmth. Ruse is ready to teach the girl other positions, confident that each new experience will help them understand each other more deeply. The girl submits to him, but in her heart she is perplexed, wondering whether he is really impressed with her. The carriage heads towards the castle, and outside the window, shadows of trees and stars flicker, foreshadowing the magic that awaits them. Hinel does not want to talk to her husband. She is overcome with a feeling of resentment and misunderstanding, and she prefers to immerse herself in her thoughts. The princess had not yet recovered from the stormy night. Her thoughts were confused in a whirlwind of emotions, and her body remained in a state of gentle relaxation. The coachmen are asked to drive more slowly, as the passengers feel that sharp turns and high speeds cause them discomfort. The girl does not understand why her husband is in no hurry to come home, because she was expecting them to spend the evening together. Ruse wants to stay alone with her again, to discuss everything that has accumulated lately, to share his feelings. The prince shows concern for the girl by hugging her tenderly and asking how she feels, and wants her to feel loved. Ruse offers the girl to sleep, assuring her that this will help her regain her strength and forget about her worries, and he himself will be there. Now the prince is cute in her eyes, and she feels that his care and attention make her happy, filling her heart with warmth. The carriage stopped, and in the silence of the night, there was a cracking of branches as the door opened, inviting her out into a world full of mysteries. The spouses are awaited by faithful servants who are ready to provide any assistance and support them at this important moment. The servants were very worried about the royal couple because rumors of an impending storm made their hearts beat faster. Evan wants to tell his master something, but his heart is pounding with excitement and he doesn't know how to start the conversation. Evan talks to the prince, trying to find the right words to convey important news that could affect his destiny. The fears were confirmed. Behind everything stood Ruse's half-brother Kylo, whose dark intentions and thirst for power threatened the prince. Evan insistently demands that something be done, his voice full of determination. Inaction could lead to disaster. Viant understands that he cannot bring Phil as a witness because his secret connections with Kylo could put a lot of lives at risk. Viant is afraid of the situation escalating because any wrong word or action can lead to unpredictable consequences. Evan appeals to his common sense, hoping that common sense will overcome his fears and doubts. Ruse believes that the aristocrats want him dead because he has become a threat to their power and influence, and now they are ready to do anything. Evan believes that the prince's bride is very scared because her life now depends on the whims of palace intrigues. Vianth worries about Hanel, that her fragility and vulnerability could become a target for those who seek to take advantage of her. Viante does not want to talk about the night with the servant, since the memories of this event cause him deep confusion. Vianth admires that Hanel is brave, because despite all the difficulties and dangers, she is not afraid to stand up for her beliefs. The cunning servant understood everything, noticing the smallest details in the behavior of Vianth and Hanel. Vianth feels embarrassed, feeling his cheeks flush as he realizes that his feelings for Hanel may be revealed. Viant orders to leave immediately, realizing that time is running out and every minute counts. The carriage heads towards the prince's homeland, shaking on the bumpy road, and a mixture of hope and anxiety hangs in the air. Hanel arrived in the Tricus Empire filled with excitement and determination as she faced new challenges. In the prince's homeland, there is always snow, which softly covers the ground with a snow-white blanket, creating an atmosphere of magic and silence. The princess is not feeling well, and the maid closes the window to protect her from the cold wind, which could make her feel worse. The prince cannot forget the previous night, when, under the starry sky, he opened his soul and his heart was filled with mixed feelings. Ruse watches the princess, admiring her grace and the invisible power that radiates from her every smile. Ruse wants to know about the new feelings that filled his heart, why every moment spent with the princess makes his soul tremble. Ruzu was never approached because of his magic, which inspired fear and respect like a dark shadow. Ruse is surprised that magic did not interfere with his wedding night, and instead of the usual feeling of isolation and fear, he felt warmth and closeness. Vianth stated the terms of the marriage to push the princess away from him, hoping that her pride and independence would not allow her to agree to such harsh demands. But he was wrong, underestimating her strength of spirit and determination, and soon realized that the princess was ready to make any sacrifice. Because of his magic, he is afraid to be with the princess, fearing that his gift might harm her or ruin their relationship. Ruse is ready to kill the princess with his own hands if he loses control, and this thought torments his soul. Viant reminds himself of the conditions of marriage, realizing that it is not just a union of two hearts, but also a responsibility. The capital of the empire, Thuban, is located on the banks of a majestic river, its majestic buildings decorated with carvings. Hinel is captivated by the beauty of the castle. Its high towers and graceful arches are straight out of a fairy tale. Before us is a capital sparkling with lights and full of life, where skyscrapers touch the clouds. The heroes also pass Mount Nukol, where Hinel lost her baby, and echoes of sadness and loss are heard in her hearts. Hinel wonders if she is pregnant, and her heart is filled with anxiety and hope, as this could be a new chapter in her life. Hinel remembers the night with Vianth, when their laughter and tender words created an atmosphere of magic. Hinel is told that the carriage has arrived, and a spark of hope flares up in her heart, because this means that changes await her. Hinel asks what is happening, her voice shaking with excitement and curiosity as she tries to understand what this event is. Ruse wants to go with her alone, to support her in this important moment, to share with her the joy of new beginnings. Dea is asked to leave, and, a little confused, she stops for a moment. Viant explains that he lied about the honeymoon because he was afraid that what happened would ruin their relationship. Hinel must now play along with him, but her feelings are fighting inside her. She wants to support him, but on the other hand, it is difficult for her to forget the deception. The prince says that they must continue to pretend to be lovers to maintain the appearance of an ideal relationship. Hinel agrees as long as everyone is not convinced by the game of lovers, but she begins to wonder if it is really just a game. Ruse warns her not to be deluded, reminding her that there can be many dangers hidden behind the mask of romance. Hinel is asked not to take the prince's feelings at face value, as manipulation may be hidden behind his charm and beautiful words. Hinel believes that the prince's feelings are a pretense created to achieve his own goals. Ruse notices her sad face, and with tenderness in his voice, asks what is bothering Hinel. He asks the girl to cover herself to avoid unnecessary glances and attention. Hinel asks what it is, pointing to the strange object Ruse is holding in her hands, and her curiosity grows. Hinel thinks that this is one of the country's traditions that can help her better understand local customs. But the prince asks to cover the wounds on her chest, fearing that open injuries could cause unnecessary questions from others. The girl agrees, realizing that at this moment the most important thing is to keep their secret and protect her feelings, and also trusting the prince. Ruse gives her a gift, an elegant necklace decorated with small stones that shimmer in the sun. The girl is curious about what is in the box, and she carefully opens the lid, hoping to see something amazing. She opens the box and looks inside with bated breath, where a necklace lies on the soft velvet bottom. The girl will receive a surprise that will make her heart beat faster. This is not just a gift, but a symbol of care and support. This beautiful necklace, decorated with bright stones, sparkled in the light, reflecting all the shades of her hopes and dreams. The necklace will cover the wounds on her chest, like a magical amulet that can hide the traces of pain. The prince asks to try on the necklace. His voice sounds soft and confident. This moment will be the beginning of something important for both. It was Evan who encouraged the prince to buy the necklace, assuring him that the gift would be a symbol of their special connection. The princess puts it on, and at that moment, the necklace sparkling on her neck seems to come to life, reflecting the light and emphasizing her beauty. The necklace fits the main character perfectly, wrapping around her neck and giving her an elegant look, as if it was made especially for her. The young man is captivated by her. His heart skips a beat with every movement she makes, and his eyes cannot tear themselves away from her grace and beauty. Hinel is worried that her wounds are visible and tries to hide them under a long sleeve, but anxiety is growing inside her, and not just because of the pain. The prince does not want her to return the necklace because it is not just a piece of jewelry, but a symbol of their connection. The prince asks Hinel to behave quietly at court so as not to attract unnecessary attention to their relationship. Before us is the palace of a neighboring state, a majestic building with high towers and exquisite arches. The couple enters the throne room, where high ceilings are decorated with luxurious frescoes and soft candlelight casts warm shadows. The prince introduces the princess to the court. His voice sounds confident and solemn, and the eyes of those gathered are filled with curiosity. They are met with coldness by Ruse's parents, who realize that their son is entering a new chapter in his life, full of hope. Ruse says that he was embarrassed to show his wife's face to the court, because for him, she was not just a princess, but the embodiment of his most secret dreams. The stepmother believes that covering her face is disrespectful to the family, because in her eyes, openness and honesty should be the basis of any relationship. Hinel lifts her veil, allowing the sunlight to wash over her face, and in that moment, she feels her fear give way to confidence. The prince stops her, his voice soft but firm, as he stops Hinel before she takes that step. The prince looks defiantly at his stepmother, his eyes full of determination as they exchange barbs. The stepmother does not like her stepson's look, in which she reads not only a challenge, but also a confidence that could destroy her authority. Hinel does not understand the evil looks of her stepmother and husband. Her innocent mind is not able to grasp the reasons for their discontent. The young man worries about her, feeling how her mood changes with every moment, and tries to find a way to support her. Hinel is worried, feeling the tension in the air grow, not understanding what exactly is causing her this anxiety. Rose asks Hinel to remain veiled, as he is afraid of his magic, fearing that his power could lead to unpredictable consequences. Hinel is also worried about this, feeling how Ruse's fear of her magic places an additional burden on her shoulders. The king laughs and allows them to keep the veil, assuring them that true power does not lie in magic, but in trust and understanding. He remembers the valor of Vianth in the battle for Triax, when, despite all the dangers, he showed incredible courage. Vianth says he will try to feel comfortable with his wife, despite his inner fears and insecurities. Vianth sarcastically remarks that he does not want bloodshed, and that this will not suit some people, since some see the conflict as a way to resolve old grievances. The king bit his tongue, resisting the urge to make a harsh remark, and instead decided to think about the situation. The tension rises, and every look, every word becomes heavy as lead, foreshadowing the inevitable conflict. The king turns to his daughter-in-law with a soft smile, trying to hide the anxiety in his voice. The king asks Hinel to take care of his son, his voice trembling with emotion, and in his eyes, fear for the safety of the kingdom. Ruse says that the king should not call Hinel a princess, because this title contains only honor. It is better to do it differently. According to Rose, Hinel should be called empress, since this title symbolizes not only her greatness and power. Everyone in the room is whispering, discussing Ruse's unexpected statement, full of curiosity and bewilderment. Hinel believes that Ruse defends her name at court, showing concern for her freedom and independence. Ruzu constantly has to defend his place at court, facing mistrust and prejudice from the nobility. The king tells his son that his behavior is unacceptable because it undermines the authority of the royal family. The king and queen depart, leaving behind an atmosphere of tension and bewilderment. The courtiers whisper among themselves, exchanging opinions about the king's recent conversation with his son. Ruse clenches his fist, feeling anger well up inside him as he realizes that his efforts to protect Hinel's freedom are not being underestimated. Father Ruza did not like the prince's mother, considering her capable of anything for the sake of power, which made him feel jealous. The prince's mother was horrified by his magic, believing it to be a curse that could destroy more than just their family. So the prince's mother died in pursuit of the king's love, sacrificing her well-being and life in order to win his heart. Ruse has a stepmother who, despite her kind smile and caring words, always tries to take the place of his real mother. Ruse promised himself not to chase love, realizing that true feelings cannot be won by force or persistence. The princess brings the prince out of his thoughts by gently touching his shoulder and speaking words full of warmth and hope. She reminds them that they are supposed to play lovers, and smiling, begins to prepare a scene full of romance. Ruse agrees with his wife, realizing that her ideas and desires are important for their life together, and he decides to support her. He takes her hand, feeling the warmth of her skin and the strength of her fingers, and looking into her eyes, he feels their connection deepen. Ruse says they are delayed because of paperwork, but tries to soften the situation, adding that these are only temporary difficulties. Hinel listens to the fictitious story about the documents, trying to understand why Ruse can't just tell the truth. Hinel agrees to be his fake lover, realizing that this can help him cope with his current difficulties. Vianth is confused when he realizes that his feelings for Hinel are growing deeper, and he wonders if he can continue to pretend. Vianth looks at his wife, trying to read her thoughts in her eyes, and feels the contradiction between duty and desire growing inside him. He wants to leave everything as is, so as not to destroy the fragile balance, but it is impossible to ignore his true feelings. The castle in the evening creates an atmosphere of mystery and comfort, where every corner keeps its secrets and stories. Dea is looking for what to wear to the reception, sorting through the hangers with outfits, while running through the images of all the guests in her head. Hinel asks to find something to match the necklace, wanting the outfit to perfectly complement its exquisite shine. Dea opens the chest, and her gaze stops, feeling how the memories of family traditions and stories fill her heart with warmth. Hinel gasps at the contents of the chest, her eyes widening in wonder when she sees what's inside. The ball for the arrival of the royal couple begins, and Hinel stands all alone, waiting for one of the guests to approach her to share this important moment or invite her to the royal dance. The princess asks if she looks too vulgar, to which the servant Dea answers her that the decoration given to her by Prince Ruse is perfect for her, and she is beautiful against the backdrop of the dressed-up courtiers. Hinel worries that her dress is too closed compared to the royal outfits. She is also worried that she had to put on brighter makeup and asks Dea where Prince Ruse Viant is. He has been gone for a long time. We see the beautiful decoration of the palace, everything in gold and luxury, and the bright lights that illuminate the hall, creating an atmosphere of magic and celebration. The main character is very worried and concerned that Prince Ruzu will not like her. Since he has not been in the throne room for a long time, she also notices that people are looking at her and tries not to pay attention to the curious glances. Hinel is very worried when she becomes the center of attention of envious courtiers. She thinks that she has overdone it with makeup, dreaming of skillfully performing her dance and attracting the attention of the prince. Among those looking at Hinel are a mysterious, handsome blonde man with a glass of wine and a certain blonde woman who whisper to each other, exchanging appraising glances. And in their conversation, there is interest and slight envy towards Hanel. The blonde man approaches the princess with a glass of wine, and she turns her head from side to side, hoping to find her husband among the colorful courtiers. An embarrassing incident occurs. The blonde spills a glass of burgundy wine on the dress of the pensive Princess Hanel, who is looking for her prince among the guests. Her face flushes with embarrassment as she consciously watches the bright liquid slowly spread across the delicate material, leaving behind an unpleasant trail and disturbing her serenity of the moment. Now, Princess Hanel's beautiful and traditional outfit is all stained with the burgundy liquid and looks terrible compared to her flawless image that she so carefully prepared for the celebration. The blonde screams, and the mysterious handsome man apologizes for the spilled wine and introduces himself to the girl. In front of her is the third prince, Kylo Viant, a typical evil brother in this story. The prince tells the princess that southern women are very brave, hinting at her revealing outfit, which embarrasses the girl, who bashfully covers herself. Prince Kylo is surprised that his brother is interested in women, and Heinel gives him a displeased look, her eyes reflecting her dislike for the stereotypes he is voicing, and she decides that she is not going to allow it. The courtiers of her fiancé's royal family, seeing this scene, begin to actively discuss and gossip about the princess and the incident with the wine. Proud and courageous, Hinel decides to emerge victorious from this situation and addresses the courtiers, saying that they must have been confused by her disregard for northern culture, which they find strange and unusual. The main character asks them to be more lenient towards her, a foreigner who does not know the traditions, and apologizes for this disregard, explaining that she had to leave her home very quickly and did not have time to get to know the country. Prince Kylo is greeted in the hall with his wife, the blonde, and he understands that he has failed to offend the princess, which is why he wishes her to enjoy the reception. Prince Kylo Viant leaves with his wife, leaving Heinel alone in the middle of the throne room, but promises himself to look after her as he sees her as a threat. Heinel is left alone, and she is sad that the prince is still not there, while the ladies of the court are actively discussing her. Heinel's heart is squeezed from loneliness and disappointment, and at this moment, she wants someone to see the real her. The courtiers are already gossiping about Heinel. They don't understand whether all southern women dress like that, and they discuss her makeup. Some of them find it quite cute. Heinel feels like a local landmark, and she is afraid to throw a wine-stained shawl over her dress, as she is afraid that she will look even more ridiculous in front of the court and the parents of Prince Ruz Vinat, her husband. Standing in the middle of the throne room in proud solitude, she thinks about how to change her outfit to look like all the courtiers, and she even wants to ask the faithful Daya to bring her another shawl to cover herself. Ruz Viant, the hero of the war between the kingdoms and the main character's husband, enters the throne room, pushing aside the guests. He walks decisively towards his wife, as always gloomy, cold, and full of mysteries and secrets. The prince notices her in the crowd and heads towards her, as she stood out among the luxurious outfits and glamour with her red yet elegant dress, as well as her extraordinary aura that attracted everyone's attention. The prince is worried that he is late and, noticing her, is deeply surprised to see her here in such a beautiful dress, which emphasized her grace and sharpness of mind. Heinel turns to him, and she is very glad that he came. Her eyes met his, and she felt that all doubts and fears disappeared, giving way to an incredible desire to share this magical evening with him. He had always been aware of her extraordinary beauty. Among the bright lights and lively music, she seemed completely different, the embodiment of a dream and a mystery, and he couldn't help but wonder how she could leave such a mark on his heart. The princess asks the prince to borrow his furry muff, as she is cold waiting for him in the throne room. Ruz Viant takes the muff off his shoulders and places it on his wife. Time stands still between them as they look at each other. The main character thinks for a long time, and with a gloomy look, looking her straight in the eyes, says that they need to talk alone, as if he was going to reveal something important to her that he had kept inside for a long time. Prince Ruz Viant does not understand her look, but Heinel tells him that she is very glad that he came and lent her his robe. The queen, Viant's stepmother, approaches them, fanning herself, and mockingly says that Heinel's new dress has caused a great stir among the nobility, and that everyone is only talking about it, that even Kylo could not convince her of this. The prince asks his mother to address Heinel by the title of queen, not princess, to which she laughingly replies that the official ceremony has not yet taken place. Prince Ruz is angry and he asks his mother to address his wife with more respect as she will soon be joining their family. His voice sounded confident and sharp as he said these words, escalating the conflict with each passing second. The queen pretends to be the epitome of innocence and tells the prince that she is not interested in people who adapt to others, hiding behind a fan and pretending that there is no conflict between them. Silence reigns as the atmosphere becomes tense between Prince Ruz Vianth, who is defending the honor of Princess Henel, his wife, and his stepmother. The protagonist, with a frightening expression on his face, tells his stepmother that if he had adapted to others, his family would not have survived in this world. The courtiers turn to the loud voice of Prince Ruz Vianth and his squabble with his mother as he lists the powers that support them, Holton, Fimek, and Sendez. The prince becomes furious and shouts at the entire palace and the chatterboxes, the courtiers, about the fact that the three powers have become financial support for their country and asks the nobility how the princess's homeland, Triax, differs from them. Vianth's father, the king, approaches the noise, and his subjects ask him if the prince has gone mad in making Triax allies, since they have already given part of their lands to the homeland of Henel, and if they will attack because of the expansion of their lands. When the king asks why he raised this topic, the prince smiles and says that his wife's honor is being belittled because of her foreign origin. The king calmly says that he sees Henel as part of the family and considers her a worthy wife for his son. He takes his wife, Vianth's stepmother, by the arm, and they leave the throne room, leaving the newlyweds alone among the courtiers. The prince sees his parents off with a gloomy and thoughtful look, and Henel, wrapped in the prince's fur coat, solemnly bows to them, saying goodbye to them. Henel asks the prince for forgiveness for the fact that he had to suffer psychologically from a quarrel with his parents because of her, feeling guilty before her husband. But the main character understands perfectly well that retreating is useless, and he sympathizes with the princess that she had to face them and go through an unpleasant conversation. Henel responds to the prince with a tender and concerned look, wrapping herself in her fur coat more tightly, realizing that the prince is sincerely worried about her and their relationship has finally reached the level of husband and wife. The protagonist wearily asks his wife to leave and rest, since she will not hear anything good here. His voice sounded quiet, but with notes of anxiety, a shadow of doubt and fatigue fell on her face. Suddenly, Evan decided to dilute the atmosphere. He had been looking for his owners for a very long time. At the behest of the prince, he had to take the princess to her chambers. But as soon as they want to leave the throne room, they are suddenly approached and greeted, as if preparing to reveal something important. In front of them is Hakal Rook, the king's mysterious advisor, his face full of calm and mystery, and in his eyes one can read respect for Prince Ruz. He bows to the royal couple. Ruz tells the princess that they don't have time to meet new people and asks her to return to her own chambers, emphasizing that they are now in a situation where every minute counts, and he doesn't want them to meet each other. The advisor slyly asks the prince if he is afraid that he will bite him during their conversation, to which the prince asks him to be silent. Hakal Rook says that he did not want to violate his personal boundaries, and Vianth Ruz asks the laughing Evan to take Henel to her quarters as quickly as possible. Evan leads the princess out of the throne room. She turns around when Hakal says goodbye to her and looks at him curiously. The princess walks down the corridor with Evan and asks about Hakal. Evan tells her that he is a traitor to the country, and Prince Ruz does not like him. However, Evan also says that Hakal Rook is too good at politics, and even Kaflo acknowledges his talents in politics. Evan also tells Henel that Ruz hates Hakal for his character, and asks the protagonist if she is comfortable with the prince's robe on her shoulders. Night falls, and the moon illuminates the castle where the action takes place, casting a silvery light on the high walls and winding corridors, creating a mysterious atmosphere full of whispers of the past and the expectation of magic. Dea combs Hanel's luxurious hair, gently running the comb through the long locks that sparkle like gold in the candlelight, and quietly whispers her dreams to her. Suddenly, a gloomy and disgruntled Viant appears in the room, his dark eyes flashing with anger, and the tense atmosphere instantly changes, causing Dea and Henel to freeze in anticipation of his wrath. His heavy gaze rests on the princess, as if penetrating into the very essence of her soul, and at that moment, tension hangs in the air, full of understatement and unexpressed feelings. Her heart freezes with fear. The prince asks Dea to leave, and the maid closes the door behind her, leaving them alone, where every sound seems deafening and the tension between them grows. Henel gets up from her chair in her nightclothes and waits for what her husband wants from her, feeling the excitement growing in her chest, and every moment of anticipation fills the room with tension, like thunderclouds. But Hinel was wrong. The prince is not angry with her. He is tired and wants to spend time with her, sincerely hoping that their evening will become an oasis of calm in the stormy sea of responsibilities. The prince gently embraces Hinel, feeling how her warmth dissolves all worries and cares, and his heart is filled with peace and joy, as if at that moment they both found each other, far from the world full of expectations. Hinel hesitates, her cheeks turning a soft blush as she realizes how close they are standing, and a mixed feeling of joy and embarrassment rises in her chest. Ruse throws the girl onto the bed, covering her body with passionate kisses, his hands gently sliding over her skin, causing trepidation and desire. Hinel stops the prince and asks him to wait, her voice trembling with excitement and a mixture of hope and fear in her eyes, as if she is trying to find the words to explain her feelings and doubts. Hinel explains that she needs to take a shower after a hard evening, and then she will come to the prince herself to wash away the fatigue and stress, hoping that this time will give her the opportunity to collect her thoughts and prepare. The prince expresses a desire to take a bath together, and the princess reminds him that they did not take a bath, but did something else. Ruse asks her to hurry up and take a bath as soon as possible. His voice sounds insistent, but at the same time gentle, because he can't wait to see her again, full of freshness and radiance. The princess kicks the prince out of the room and asks him to wait outside the door so that she can collect her thoughts a little and prepare for the meeting, because she needs time to realize her feelings. While the princess is undressing, the servant Dea asks if the prince was unhappy with Hinel's clothes, to which she replies that she is causing inconvenience to the prince by not knowing the traditions and customs of his homeland. Dea is very upset, and her thoughts are occupied with how to dress the lady so that neither the prince nor his family will be angry, and the princess will not look stupid in the eyes of other people. Dea's gaze stops on a small bottle that fell out of the pocket of the princess's dress, and her heart stops with curiosity, because she understands that this mysterious object can hide secrets within itself. Dee likes the smell of the liquid in the bottle, and she believes that adding it to the princess's bath will give her a pleasant aroma and make her attractive in the eyes of the prince. Dea adds the scented liquid from the bottle to the water, and the sweet aroma instantly fills the air, filling the room with a magical atmosphere that makes her wonder what secrets and magic this bottle might hold. Prince Ruse Viant changes his clothes and takes them off, feeling the weight of royal duties disappear with each item, leaving only lightness and anticipation of a meeting that could change his life forever. The prince is caught changing his clothes by his maid Dea, who is afraid of his wrath, but at the same time curious about what might happen if she decides to stay and watch this moment. She gives the prince lemon juice to refresh himself, and catching his gaze, she feels an invisible connection between them, as if at that moment they both understand that life can be more than just duties. At this time, Heinel washes herself, enjoying the warm water that washes away the fatigue and worries of the past day, and dreams of freedom and adventure that await beyond the palace arise in her thoughts. Ruse enters the bathroom and asks Hinel to hurry. His voice is urgent, but also has a slight hint of impatience, because he can't wait for the moment when they are alone together and have the baby. Hinel is embarrassed by the prince's words. Her cheeks flush, and she turns away, trying to hide her embarrassment. But deep down, she is pleased to know that he so longs to spend time with her. She remembered how the prince stood up for her in front of her parents. Although he denies that he does everything for the sake of the crown, he begins to have feelings for her. Hinel thinks about the prince and slowly sinks into the water, feeling how warm waves envelop her, carrying away worries and doubts, and in her head, more and more images of their joint adventures that await them arise. Hinel sinks into the water more and more slowly, angry at herself and thinking about the prince, because she can't understand why his words affect her so much, and why she can't just concentrate. Hinel understands that the prince is having a hard time because of her, and he takes the blame for her misdeeds upon himself, although she knows that this is not fair, because it is she who should be responsible for her actions. This realization only intensifies her internal torment. Hinel's thoughts revolve around the kiss with the prince, and how gentle and caring he was with her, making her heart flutter with the memory of that moment when their lips met, and she felt his warmth envelop her. Hinel believes that perhaps Prince Ruse is sincere in his desires, and it is difficult for her to hide her growing embarrassment when she realizes that his attention and care awaken feelings in her that she has long tried not to think about. The curtains slowly move aside, the naked princess covers herself with her hands and thinks that Dea has arrived, whom she asks to give her a towel. But it is not Dea who has arrived. The princess is awaited by Ruse, who is shocked by her naked body, and because of this drops the lemon juice he brought for the princess on the floor. Ruse grabs the girl's hand, his firm yet gentle touch causing her to instantly feel excited, and she feels his warmth penetrate her heart, making her think that maybe there is something more between them. Ruse abruptly presses Hanel against the wall, and their lips merge in a passionate lovemaking, becoming hotter and hotter, as if the whole world around them disappears, leaving only the two of them. The princess interrupts the prince's heated caresses, pulling away for a moment to look into his eyes and make sure that they both understand that what is happening between them is not a dream, and that their feelings are not just a passing infatuation. She is terrified and screams for the prince to stop, who freezes, not understanding what he did wrong, his heart clenching with fear, and he realizes that in his desire for closeness, he may have crossed a line that she was not ready to cross. Ruse remembers something terrible, looking at the princess, whom he pounced on like a hungry beast. He is embarrassed and tries to understand what he did wrong. Memories of violence in the war also flash before him.